Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 PGA Championship Data Dive Show. I do have one shout out to give. Subscriber named C let me know in the comments from last night's show that he had the Rory outright last week at the Wells Fargo. So congratulations, C, on your hit. And as always, if you have success, whether that's in DFS, whether that's outright wagers, doesn't even have to be for golf. Whether you're playing fantasy baseball, maybe you're in the NBA playoffs and DFS with that. If you have success and you're a member of the community here at Calls, let me know about any of your successes. Would love to be able to shout you out at the beginning of shows. So congratulations again, C. We are here to dig into a lot of the data around the PGA Championship. Going to be similar in style to what we did for the Masters. It's got its own file, especially with it having multiple or changing courses every year. We're going to do the best we can. I'm excited. I've been at the computer all day researching things for you all, so I'm excited to share what I have for you all. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. There are a lot of great golf analytics tools out there, no doubt about it. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where I, in fact, posted some research around the past 4 winners of the PGA Championship so long as it was played in May, 2020 being 2020. Did not include that year. But when the PGA Championship moved to its new spot in the schedule in May, going back to 2019, I posted some research around the winners of those PGA Championships. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour and the players that fit the criteria among the pattern that I have found for the week, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. Certainly fired off several numbers or several players at numbers that I liked this morning. So want to hear from you all in that regard too, who you are thinking about wagering or who you have wagered if you have already. But if you want to see my weekly betting cards and the top players that I use in my lineups for DFS, that comes out every Wednesday evening, so give me a follow over at X as well. Speaking of Wednesday evenings, you're going to be able to join Gabe and I in his Substack chat as long as you are subscribed to his article, which is free to do, and you follow him over on social media. So his handle is in the description as well. I talk about it every week, but he really does write a very good article. It's a great way to start your week of preparation, and then he continues to update you with his own version of statistics with recent form and course history. So go show him some support and follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. Want to hear from you all in addition to any wagers that you've made. Have you made any lineups for the PGA Championship? Who are you targeting early on in your week? Is there a player that you know you're not going to be using? Is there any style of player? Would love to hear about that. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2024 PGA Championship. And we start, as we always do, over at Windfinder on a Monday evening. The weather has been better than I thought it was going to be so far. Having said that, we are supposed to get a decent amount of rain tomorrow. I say we, as I am in a suburb of Louisville, Kentucky, so the course is about 20 minutes away from me. A little bit of rain perhaps on Wednesday night. I thought I'd just clean these off, but apparently not. A little bit of rain maybe Wednesday night. Thursday looks fantastic. High of, mid 70s, and very, very little wind. And that's about the end of the good weather. Friday looks a little bit more chilly. A little bit of rain. Saturday looks like it's going to rain all day. And then Sunday, a little bit more breezy, especially in the morning. A little bit more warm as well. But lots of rain in the forecast. So, again, I think this course is going to play extra long if indeed we get the rain that we're supposed to The course will be softer and just going to play a little bit longer. But part of the change to Zoysia was in anticipation of this, allowing for more firm and fast conditions even in rain. So we'll see how Valhalla plays this week if we indeed get this weather. If we don't get the rain, it's going to be extremely fast and extremely firm. But there's a look at the extended forecast. Of course, we will update this Wednesday night at the beginning of the show. But let's go ahead and move on over to Fantasy National. Just very, very quickly, you can see I was doing a little bit of my own research. I'm not even on the Strokes Gained page view. First thing we're going to look at, just as a kind of a review here, it's the PGA Championship. It's a major. It's going to be difficult. It generally is. Very rarely will you find a round that is average in terms of difficulty relative to par. So, in the past 2 years, when rounds have been difficult relative to par, your top performers are Scotty, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Xander, Cam Smith, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Tyrrell Hatton, and Will Zalatoris. Do note that we do now have the Wells Fargo in the database today. So I went ahead and updated a few things for my own sake in files that I keep. But last I saw, we have not gotten the Myrtle Beach Classic. The last time I checked in depth was around 2 p.m. or so. Yeah, we still don't have the Myrtle Beach Classic, so I don't know if there's a delay there or we are going to get it. But we do have the Wells Fargo. But anyway, there's a look at your top performers in rounds that have been difficult relative to par the past couple of years. Surprising to see Cam Smith have that many rounds. I don't know if we should count 36 rounds here, but of course, he one of the best players in the world. Tyrrell Hatton, much the same. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well when rounds have been difficult. Eric Van Rooyen, Jimmy Walker. Most of these players have very few rounds, including Tiger. Let's see, Nick Taylor has not played as well when rounds have been difficult relative to par, even though that is his best. He just hasn't played well when rounds have been difficult relative to the rest of the field. Let's see, some others around here. Toasty, Luke List, Villegas, Lucas Herbert, Grayson Murray, Svensson. So there's a look at your top and best and worst performers when rounds have been difficult. Another thing that we can absolutely look at is long courses, especially since by raw yardage, Valhalla is the third longest course that the players will see this season. By par, since it's only a par 71, it's the second longest course that the players will see this season. So when on long courses the past 2 years, our top performers have been Scotty, Xander, Max Homa, Rory, Akshay Bhatia, Sungjae, Jon Rahm, Wyndham Clark, Tyrrell Hatton, and Denny McCarthy. Do note that at least Fantasy National defining long courses as over 7,400 yards. So whatever your definition is and whatnot, just understand what the definition is here from Fantasy National. Over 7,400 yards, clearly meeting that threshold at over 7,600 yards is Valhalla. The other end of the spectrum, players who have not played well on long courses. Adrian Meronk, again, very small sample size, but has not played well on long courses. Svensson, DJ's, again, some very, very low sample size here. Missed the cut at the Masters. Did not play particularly well on the weekend of the Masters last year and whatnot. Eric Cole, Jake Knapp, Villegas, Toasty, Minwoo Lee has not played well on long courses. Nick Taylor, Griot, Luke List. which is surprising considering his win came at the Farmers. Just going by what we have here in Fantasy National. So taking a quick look at here, the Masters, he was, okay, I suppose, probably about field average. The API was a real struggle for him. This year's Farmers wasn't the best for him, although he did make the cut. Wells Fargo last year was a real struggle. So other than his win at the Farmers a couple of years ago, he has struggled on long courses. Kitayama, Ben Coles, Hitsatsune, Harmon, Cam Davis, Peter Malnati on down. There's a look at your worst performers on long courses. Since we have the long course metric still on, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of things in here, particularly off the tee, as that is the way I am leaning right now in terms of what filter to use with that metric. So on long courses, this is to emulate that driver is in most players' hands, as I think it will be for the majority of holes here at Valhalla, although there might be times where players will be prudent with those shorter par fours. But on long courses, your top off the tee players: Xander, Rory, Scotty Scheffler, Keith Mitchell, Luke List, Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, Taylor Moore, Max Homa, and Stefan Jaeger. Again, just because I had the filter still selected, we're going to be looking at the off the tee. We'll look at it a couple of different ways, but I don't want to get too heavy into it because let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Excel and take a look at maybe not necessarily specific Valhalla data, although we can look at 2014. But remember, the course has changed considerably since then. But take a look at some PGA Championship data in of itself. So let me make sure I've got the page view changed for you all. I will zoom out just a touch. But, of course, Oak Hill, where we were last year, Southern Hills, when JT won, Kiowa, Phil Mickelson's win. Now, 2020 we won't do too much with, since it was played in the fall. Just due to the way the 2020 year was. Best page, of course, in 2019. And we last saw Valhalla in 2014 when Rory won. And we actually had an easy round then. But it has been several years since we've had an average round even at a PGA Championship. The last three years, every single round's been difficult. 3 of the 4 at TPC Harding Park when Morikawa won were difficult. Bethpage Black, difficult. So very, very difficult. Okay, let's take a look at a few of these stats and these metrics here. I do want to zoom in on this for you all. So I know this won't seem like much by themselves. That's why off to the side here I do have my comparison course chart. And we can compare at least to other courses and other, or maybe like the PGA Tour average, if you will. At a PGA Championship, since 2012, off the tee has averaged a 2. That would be the highest if it was a consistent course. Off the tee is going to be a really big factor. It generally is at a PGA Championship. 3.17 in approach. Is also the highest by a decent margin. It is much higher than the average PGA Tour course. Around the green is also high, but it's not actually the highest. It's tied with the Fortinet. And we know that the Fortinet is also pretty darn important in terms of around the green. The Fortinet around the green is about 34% or so. More important than the average full field course. So, I mean, it's going to play a factor, but I am still focused on the ball strikers this week, and I think that's the appropriate way to approach this. And then, I didn't mean to have that play on words there, but it works. And then putting at a 2.5, not the highest, but certainly higher than the average full field course. If we look at Valhalla and 2014, Let me make sure I get to the correct year here. It's here. Again, I don't want to put a whole lot of weight into this. The course has changed quite a bit since then. But off the tee, pretty darn strong. The approach, really darn strong. And the putting was even more so a factor at Valhalla as opposed to the rest of these years. 2015, and is this Bell Reeve? Whistling Straits. It was a 3.6. I think that might be the highest. Yeah, because you have a 2.8. You have even less than a 2 at a former PGA Championship. So 3.08. Again, I don't want to put a whole lot into this, but the greens are the same. They are bent. They're still small, still bent. They're going to be fast. So we're definitely going to be focused on bent putting this week. But in case you wanted to take a look at the 2014 PGA Championship, still quite a bit in approach. I'm still going to be favoring the off the tee, but maybe around the green deserves a little bit more of a facet than what I've been giving it credence to, considering how important it was in 2014. Moving to distance and greens and whatnot. And again, remember, this is all for all PGA Championships back to 2012. But distance is a factor. Distance is an absolute factor. The only time it wasn't was at Kiowa when Phil Mickelson won. And it was still right at average for the PGA Tour. Back in 2014, it was a 22.5. Not necessarily the highest, but strong. Very, very strong. Fairways, surprisingly, at least surprisingly for me, not that big of a deal. 1.2 is slightly, and I mean just slightly, under full field course average on the PGA Tour. So it's really about the distance when you come to a PGA Championship, and I'll have some research around that at the end of the show. Instead, we're going to be looking at distance, and we're going to be looking at greens. This greens number is astronomically high. Just to give you an idea, the average full field course on the PGA Tour is about a 3.06. This is more than 1.25 shots more important at a PGA Championship. This is by far and away the highest. No other full field course would even have a 4. The highest that I'm seeing quickly with a scan is a 3.6 at the John Deere in terms of greens gained. So this number is astronomically high. It was a 4.1 back in 2014. We're going to be looking at greens. We're going to be looking at distance in this page view. Looking at or going to scoring, I would have thought that it was all about the bogey avoidance, and certainly the bogey avoidance is the higher raw number. But I'm telling you, this birdies gain number is actually pretty high as well. So we might want to take a look at both birdies gained and bogeys avoided. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to be using the difficult relative to par filter. This is, as a statistician, this is my preference, is to combine a metric, like a scoring metric, with a scoring filter whenever possible to keep things consistent. So that's what we're going to be doing. But I'm telling you, this birdies gained number is actually pretty high. Now this bogeys avoided number is just astronomically high. So I still think the best thing to look at is the bogey avoidance in this page view. But I'm not going to ignore the birdies gained. Whether it makes it into the final mixed condition model come Wednesday, I'm not sure. But we're at least going to look at it. And you see the Eagles just not a factor. Eagles very, very, very rarely happen at a PGA Championship. So we're just not going to worry about birdies are better or even Eagles. We're just looking at birdies gained when it's difficult. Again, I understand the argument that courses change and whatnot. So I don't want to go too heavy in the 3, 4s, and 5s, although we'll see that the par 4s are, extremely important. But looking at Valhalla, Valhalla was one of the easiest PGA Championships that we've seen in a long time. And with that, you can see that with the birdies gained of a 4.4 versus a 3.3 on the bogey avoidance. And that's another reason why I want to at least give some credence to the birdies gained. Even though the course has been lengthened considerably since 2014, much of the layout is the same. So there is a chance that if players are at their absolute peak performance, we could see some pretty good scoring. Maybe mid-teens. Because I believe Rory got up to 19. I believe. I could be wrong with that, so don't yell at me. But this was one of the easier PGA Championships we have seen, and you see the birdies gained was higher in 2014. Now moving to the 3s, 4s, and 5s, you see majority of your par 3s are going to come in these long par 3s. That's the way the PGA of America sets up a course for the PGA Championship. No difference here for Valhalla. If we do anything with par 3s, it would just be in total par 3s. Again, remember we have 1, 2, and 1 for Valhalla in terms of par 3s in each range bucket. 1, 2, and 1. And then in 2014, you see that the majority of the strokes came into the 200 to 225 because 3 of the 4 measured to that. We didn't have any 225 plus. They've added that tee to extend one of the par 3s, I can't remember which one, to 242 yards. So instead of looking entirely just in this range of 200 to 225, I think it would be correct just to look at par 3s in general. Moving to par 4s, look at this astronomically high number, 5 2/3. Compared against the par 3s, which is a 1.7. So this is more than 3 times the importance. Par 4s are more than 3 times the importance of the par 3s. And the par 3s are actually a little bit more than the par 5s across all PGA Championships. So again, much like Quail Hollow last week, a lot of emphasis in the par 4s. A lot of emphasis in the par 4s. It was a damn near a 6 in 2014. Now, I don't think we're going to focus on any particular range, especially across all PGA Championships. Maybe the 450 to 5, but still, it's just all the par 4s because Valhalla has a couple of short par 4s that measure into this range. It has 1 or 2 here. 5 of our 11 on the scorecard measure to here. So we have 2, 2, 5, and 2, at least on the official scorecard. So I don't think we'll do anything in terms of a specific length. If we did, it would be the 450 to 500. But I think we're going to put quite a bit of emphasis on these par 4s again, just like we did last week at Quail Hollow, using this data to back it up. And then the par 5s, surprising, because considering you have to score on them, but it's actually a little bit lower than the par 3s. I don't know how much I want to believe that. I think I would put in par 5s before I put par 3s in the mixed condition model. And this is a really astronomically high number because there's only been one PGA Championship that had a par 5 measured to that length. But in 2014, Valhalla had a 2.2 in the par 5s versus, I can't remember, a 1.95 in the par 3s. So the par 5s were a little bit more important for Valhalla in 2014, and I still believe that's the case. And I mentioned last night how I didn't know if proximity was going to be a big factor because these greens are small. It's going to be a factor, actually. And I would say the majority of it is going to be in the 200 plus. But I'm more focused on this total procs because last year at Oak Hill, these greens are actually smaller than Valhalla. These greens averaged 4,500 square feet. Southern Hills was slightly above 5,000 square feet. And look how much the total procs played a huge factor. These are enormous numbers. 204 and a half, 210. Huge numbers. Whereas the highest total procs number for a full field consistent course on the PGA Tour is a 138. So just, about 70% more important than the average, or than the highest full field course. And the highest is the Wyndham. And those greens are pretty large. So probably going to be looking at some total procs tonight after I did quite a bit of research today around the PGA Championships and seeing that the past two PGA Championships were played with small greens and total procs was a big factor. Now, yes, the majority of it is coming in these long irons, no doubt about that. 200 plus, maybe even 175 to 200, but more so in the 200 plus. Correct. But I still think total procs is going to be a pretty big factor. So because of that, and I'll keep this up, but because of that, let's go ahead and run through some of Fantasy National and take a look at the players who are the best at these metrics that we just went through there in Microsoft Excel. So we looked at off the tee on long courses. I don't think there's any... I think it actually would be worthwhile to take a look at off the tee when rounds are difficult relative to par. So when rounds are difficult relative to par, our top off the tee players: Scotty, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Cam Young, Siwoo Kim, Will Zalatoris, Keith Mitchell, Victor Hovland, Gary Woodland, and Bryson. Those are your top 10 in terms of off the tee when it's difficult the past couple of years. Let's take a look at approach, and I'm gonna shrink this to the last 24. And when we go to the early look file, when we finish the show off with some of the research, I'll explain why I want to look at this with only 24 rounds. But in the past 24 rounds this calendar year, our top strokes gained approach players have been Scotty, Corey Connors, Keith Mitchell, Siwoo Kim, Tom Hoge, Akshay Bhatia, Shane Lowry, Aaron Wright, Ludwig Aubert, and Hideki. Take a look at some around the green. I think it's probably safe to say that we're going to look at long rough. This rough is going to be 4 inches thick in most places, especially around the green. So I'll remove the 2024 filter and go to 2 years. In the past 2 years, in long rough, our top around the green players: Scotty, Russell Henley, Ricky Fowler, Ben Griffin, Brendan Todd, Doug Gim, Paddy Harrington, Padraig Harrington, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Siwoo Kim, and Luke Donald are your top 10 in terms of around the green. So perhaps some names there to maybe think about taking a shot in the dark or a dart throw on. And then lastly, let me clear all these. We're going to look at bent greens. We'll definitely be using the fast and lightning speed filters. Again, with the rain that's in the forecast, I do think that these greens might slow down enough to be classified as fast. If the PGA America had its way, they would keep it at lightning. But in the past 2 years, on fast and lightning bent greens, your top putters are Denny McCarthy, JT Poston, Seabez, Christian Bezadenhout, Brendan Todd, Victor Hovland, Harris English, Keegan Bradley, Taylor Montgomery, Wyndham Clark, and Terrell Hatton. Alrighty, let's clear all that. Now we're going to move to the fairways and greens, and there's two distinct metrics we're going to be looking for: driving distance and greens. So my assumption is, much like off the tee, I'm going to use driving distance on long courses. However, there are a couple of shorter par fours that players could decide to be more pragmatic or prudent, if you will, and lay up. But for the most part, I think driver is going to be in these players' hands the majority of the time. So on long courses in the past 2 years, your top driving distance players: Rory, Cam Young, Nikolai Højgaard, Wyndham Clark, Ludwig Aubert, Minwoo Lee, Ben An, Adam Scott, Vincent Norman, and Keith Mitchell. Looking at driving distance when difficult I can also see a reasonable argument for this. Your top 10 distance players when rounds are difficult. Rory, Cam Young, Wyndham Clark, Bryson, Minwoo Lee, Ben An, Adam Scott, Gary Woodland, Vincent Norman, and Scotty Scheffler. So a lot of same overlap here. A couple of new names. Gary Woodland jumps into the top 10 when it's difficult. Let's see. I think majority of those other players are about the same or close to it. So again, just distance I feel is going to be a pretty darn big factor. Taking a look at greens when rounds have been difficult relative to par. Scotty, Xander, John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Cam Young, Victor Hovland, Wyndham Clark, Joaquin Niemann, Tony Finau, Patrick Cantlay, and Will Zalatoris. Those are your top 10 in terms of greens when rounds have been difficult. And that would be the way I'm going to use this combination. I would go with greens, the metric greens with the difficult filter. However, we can look at greens on long courses because that also simulates longer irons per se. So your top greens gained players on long courses. Scotty, Corey Connors, Xander, Andrew Putnam, John Rahm, Wyndham Clark, Finau, Hubbard, Garnett, Homa, and Cam Young. I much more prefer the difficult because you'll get a player like Mark Hubbard where quite a few of his sample size will come in the Caribbean events like Corrales, Puerto Rico, things of that nature, where just a different style of event, clearly. You're not in an alternate field event. Those, while they're not birdie fest, I mean, they were this year. They typically haven't been birdie fest. They're certainly not difficult down there. And this is the PGA Championship. It's going to be difficult. So that's why I prefer greens gained when it is difficult, per se. But this also could simulate greens on long courses. This could also simulate your long irons as well. So speaking of long, actually, before we go to that, I was going to say we were going to go to proximity. Let's go to scoring. And no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm going to go with the scoring metric and a scoring filter, like I explained when we were going through Microsoft Excel. First thing, and I think the more important one, is the bogey avoidance. So in the past 2 years, when rounds have been difficult relative to par, your top bogey avoiders have been Scotty, Tommy Fleetwood, Jason Day, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander, Tyrrell Hatton, Denny McCarthy, Max Homa, Victor Hovland, and Rory. And then if we want to look at birdies gained when it's difficult, Scotty, Wyndham Clark, Rory, Victor Hovland, Joaquin Niemann, Cameron Young, Tyrrell Hatton, Will Zalatoris, Keegan Bradley, and Sahith Theegala. So a lot of overlap, clearly. I mean, these are the best players in the world. Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Victor, Tyrrell Hatton. These guys are all top 10, both birdies gained and bogeys avoided. However, the two big outliers are Keegan and Sahith. They have not been avoiding bogeys very well, but they have been gaining birdies. And this is one of the reasons why I was completely off of Sahith Theegala last week. And a part of the reason why the Wells Fargo was as decent as it was for me, because I know he was very popular, but he struggles to avoid bogeys when it's difficult. So I was off of him at the Wells Fargo. We'll have to see what it's like or how he fares in the final mixed condition model come Wednesday. But it's another reason to be a little gun shy about Sahith Theegala. He does not avoid bogeys very well when it is difficult. So there's that page view. Now we'll go into proximity. And let's go ahead and just go to the last 24 rounds. Much like the approach, just kind of want to get a narrow view or much more recent form in terms of proximity. I myself am going to prefer to look at the total procs. So our top total procs performers the past 24 rounds, so long as it's been in this calendar year: Scotty, Ludwig Ober, Aaron Rai, Lucas Glover, Tony Finau, Rory, Tom Hoagie, Siwoo Kim, Christian Bezuidenhout, and Russell Henley. And another reason why I like total procs as opposed to just the 200 plus procs is that, again, we have some shorter par fours here at Valhalla. Some that players might try to get very aggressive with and would absolutely not leave themselves more than 120 or 100 yards in. Now, yes, the majority of our par fours are pushing 480 or 490 yards, and it very well could leave 200 plus proximity or 200 plus approach shots. Not to mention the par fives, but that's why I think I prefer the total procs, is that we do have some shorter par fours around Valhalla. But in case you are interested, our top 200 plus procs players in the field this week at the PGA Championship: Xander, Bobby Mack, Sami Välimäki, Ben An, Thorbjorn Olesen, Vincent Norman, Keegan Bradley, Ludwig Ober, Gary Woodland, and Tony Finau. So you see a few of these players are going to be pretty good regardless. Like Sami Välimäki, third in 200 plus, 36 which is good, especially relative to this field. Good at total procs. Ben An, 4th and 15th. Olesen, 5th and 20th. Keegan, Ludwig Oberg's top 10 in both. Tony Finau, top 10 in both. Corey Connors, just outside the top 10 in both. But you also get some very, very interesting numbers here, like Xander. He's the best long iron player, but he's 120th in total procs. Like, every other proximity is actually pretty bad, but he's just the best at 200 plus. Same for Bobby Mack. Bobby Mack is horrendous looking at every other proximity, but he's number 2 at 200 plus. Vincent Norman, much the same. He's good with 175 to 200 as well. So there's a look at your top long iron proficiency players, long iron procs players. Again, I am leaning more so in total procs due to a few of the par fours that are short and absolutely not going to warrant a 200 plus approach shot. Moving into the par 3s, 4s, and 5s, again, I am of the firm belief that if we look at par 3 scoring, it'll be total par 3s. So, your top total par 3 performers in the field: Scotty Scheffler, Thomas Dietrich, Jordan L. Smith, Denny McCarthy, Matt Fitzpatrick, Billy Ho, Billy Horschel, Russell Henley, Batia, Brian Harmon, and EVR, Eric Van Rooyen. Moving to the par 4s, this is going to have substantial weight come Wednesday night in the mixed condition model. Your top par 4 performers: Scotty, Hideki, Cam Smith, Xander, Rory, Tommy Fleetwood, Brooks, Bryson, Patrick Reed, and Alex Noren. If you wanted to take a look at the 450 to 500, I don't think it's incorrect to do so. I don't know if I'm going to separate it out come Wednesday night, but our top 450 to 500 par 4 performers, last 24 rounds: Bryson, Rory, Ludwig Ober, Hideki, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, Ben Coles. There's an interesting name, at least in terms of the long par 4s. Brooks, Patrick Reed, and Siwoo Kim. And then finally, we'll take a look at par 5 scoring. Total par 5s: Scotty, Mackenzie Hughes, Xander, Patrick Cantlay, Siwoo Kim, Akshay Bhatia, Thorbjorn Olesen, Will Zalatoris, Justin Thomas, and Min Woo Lee. I just realized that it has a model rank here. That's honestly, it's just from last week's Wells Fargo off the tee approach, putting. So I'm actually going to clear all that so it's not confusing, because I was getting confused. Or at least the mixed condition model rank there. Alrighty. So there's a look at, as we went through each page view in Fantasy National, who I think the top 10, top 15 or so players are in some very, very key metrics. Generally speaking, for a PGA Championship, and then, a little bit more specifically for Valhalla. Let's go ahead and move to Fantasy National. Not going, or move to Fantasy National, my goodness. Let's go ahead and move to the early look file. And again, remember, this is going to be performance at all PGA championships, not just 2014 and Valhalla. So let's take a look at who some of the best, and I need to change the page view, my apologies. Let's take a look at some of the players who have performed the best at these metrics at various PGA championships since 2012. Again, Fantasy National only goes back to 2012. So absolutely, we're going to look at off the tee. Who's been the best off the tee at PGA championships? Adrian Meronk, only one time. Cam Young, to be expected. He's pretty elite off the tee as it is. Keith Mitchell, 3 for 4. He's been very good off the tee. He hasn't been very good much else, but he's been very good off the tee. Alex Smalley, of course, Bryson, Patrick Cantlay, Zalatoris, Brooks, Rahm, Rory, Scheffler, Xander. He's had actually a little bit less in terms of success that you might think, but very good off the tee. Taylor Pendrith only one time, and he put the absolute daylights out that year. I'm assuming it's last year. It might have been another one. Jaeger, not so much in terms of success, but he's been very good ball striking at a PGA championship. He just didn't putt very well. So interesting. Might be an interesting name for you. Morikawa, of course, the irons need to be dialed in because he's much less in terms of distance. Jordan L. Smith has been very good off the tee. Interesting name there. Sam Burns, Minwoo Lee. So there's a look at some of your best off the tee performers historically at PGA championships. We are absolutely not going to ignore the approach. So your top iron players: Will Zalatoris, Victor Hovland, Brooks, Colin Morikawa, Tagala, Jaeger, Murray. Although Murray does have a top 25 in his lone PGA championship. He actually played extremely well. These guys only played one time, so I don't want to, take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. Very small sample size. JT, Hideki, although after the withdrawal at the Wells Fargo, I don't know how much you can trust Hideki. Sepp Straka, Patrick Cantlay, Eric Cole, only one time. He played extremely, extremely well. This does not feel like a good Eric Cole fit. Tiger's been very good with his irons, even though he has had some very, very middling performance, at least since 2012. Cam Davis, there's Scotty, Meronk again, Victor Paris, Terrell Hatton. So there's a look at your top iron players. I am going to skip putting just because not every single PGA championship is played on bent. Instead, let's do driving distance and greens from that page view. So your top driving distance players at PGA championships: Minwoo Lee, Rory, Dean Burmester. Interesting. Much less in terms of success. He's only 2 for 3, average finish of 70th, but plenty of distance. Bryson, of course. Brooks, of course. DJ, Ryan Fox, coming off a very good Myrtle Beach Classic tournament. Cam Young, Luke List, Sepp Straka, Adam Scott, Rahm, Scheffler, Day. Again, these guys who have had consistent success. The Rorys, the Brooks, even Adam Scott, average finish inside the top 40. John Rahm, average finish inside the top 40. Scheffler, Day. These guys move it. Finau, JT. These guys move it off the tee, and that's why I believe that is going to be a pretty integral part of and who decides who wins the PGA Championship this year. We will look at greens. So we'll sort on greens gained in PGA Championships. But again, Meronk just one time, Hodges one time, Zalatoris twice. There's Jordan L. Smith again. Interesting. Colin Morikawa, JT, Victor Hovland, Victor Paris, Grayson Murray, Rory, Ben Griffin. Only one time. He hit plenty of greens, but missed the cut. It was pretty bad otherwise. Brooks, Mitchell, Xander, J-Day, Justin Rose. Look at that. 11 for 12. Average finish of 21st. Hitting plenty of greens. He's got, a good amount of distance. So, not a sexy name by any means, but epitome of consistency in the PGA Championships. Keegan, much the same. A little bit less in terms of high leaderboard success, but he's been very consistent. 10 for 12. Been good with the greens. Molinari, 9 for 10. All right. Moving to bogey avoidance, and I'm going to skip the birdies gain only because there's quite a bit of the research I want to show you all. Bogey avoidance, over here. Eric Cole, only one time. Zalatoris, there's Victor Hovland, J-Day, Spieth, Cantley, Ricky Fowler, Smalley only one time. Patrick Reed, again, he's going to be like the Colin Morikawa where he's going to have to rely on his short game around the green and putting because he doesn't have a lot of distance. Woodland has been very good in terms of avoiding bogeys at PGA Championships. Rory, Steve Stricker, look at that, 7 for 9. Don't know how I feel about Steve Stricker this year. This is a daunting course for somebody who generally doesn't have a lot of length. Davis, Hatton, look at Matt Wallace, 5 for 5 in his 5 trips to PGA Championships. Justin Thomas and Victor Paris, Scotty Scheffler, Adam Scott. Okay. We'll skip the threes. Let's go to the par fours. They're so important. Just total par fours. Zalatoris again. So there you go. Brooks. Big game Brooks. He's number 2. Arguably number 1 considering Zalatoris has a very small sample size. Scheffler. Rory, these guys, what do? They take care of the par fours. Mostly it does look like it's in the 450 to 500, but just overall, par fours. Rory, these two only one time. Victor, who's played very well in PGA Championships. Hatton, Spieth, Thomas, Morikawa, all you guys. They're taking advantage of par fours. Lowry, Cantley, Justin Rose, J-Day, Rahm. So, again, it's going to have a very, very big portion of the mixed condition model. Last thing I want to do in terms of this portion of the early look file, let's take a look at total procs at PGA Championships. Victor, Smalley only one time. There's Morikawa. Zalatoris only twice. Hatton, Scheffler, Thomas. Cam Davis has popped a little bit. Thomas Dietrich. Only twice. Rasmus Højgaard only twice. Griffin only once. Rahm, Koepka, Bryson, Victor Paris. Lucas Glover's only 3 for 6, but he's been good with total procs. Eric Cole, Cantley, Henley, 7 for 10. Hideki, Sungjae, Jordan L. Smith again, Neiman, DJ. So there's a look at your top total procs performers as well. Okay. We'll sort on best average finish. We're going to end the show with some in-depth look at the research that led to what I posted today. Unfortunately, because it's only 140 characters, I wasn't able to post everything that I wanted, and that's why I want to do a pretty, deeper dive into this. So let's take a look at prior winners of the PGA Championship so long as it was played in May. So we're going to end in 2019. That's when it moved to May. Because historically it was played, late July to mid-August. So, again, color coordinating here. This blue is a long course. Red would signify difficult. And I don't know why I don't have that one, because I think this was difficult. Or was it? I don't remember. So look at the long course here. I know it might be a touch hard to see with the coloring. I can actually change that for you all. Let me do that. One more. Let me get a lighter shade of blue. Hopefully that's easier to see. course, Brooks going to live. He had only played one tournament before the PGA Championship last year. It was the Masters. Finished second. We talked about Masters performance last night and leading into the PGA Championship. But Justin Thomas, top 5, top 10, a top 20, and a top 5. All of these are on long courses, at least, over 7,400 yards. Phil, slight outlier, of course, but he was 3 for 4 in making the cut on long tournaments, including his best performance, which was a top 20, almost a top 20 at the Masters. He did make the cut at the Wells Fargo before going to Kiowa and winning. Played okay at the Farmers. Brooks in 2019, runner-up at the Masters. Top 25 the TOC, which he actually never really has played the TOC, or never did play the TOC particularly well. He 34th in 2018, 24th. It's just not his thing. For whatever reason, he just didn't play the Century all that well. So a top 25, another top 30, a runner-up. These guys played the long courses well that year. And then looking at the difficult, top 20 from JT. Look at Phil. He had a top 25 at the Honda. Not a long course, but it's still difficult. Brooks, runner-up at the Honda. That same year he won the PGA. So, long. You want form. You want long and difficult, particularly on long and difficult courses. And you just want really good form. Of course, Brooks, runner-up. Look at JT when he won at Southern Hills. Top 5. Yeah, top 35. Middling at the RBC Heritage. Top 10. A podium finish, a third. Top 10, top 10. Again, Phil, slight outlier, but he had 2 top 25s. He did have 2 top 25s leading into the PGA within the past couple of months before the PGA. Brooks, 2 top 5s, and then another runner-up slightly further away than 2 months. So you also want some very good form. And another reason why I was focused on just 24 rounds for approach. Yes, we don't get the data from the Masters from Brooks last year, but I would be hard-pressed to believe that this is anything other than at least good when he finished his second at the Masters. Look at JT. Gained 3, gained 4.5, gained 7.5 at the Valspar. Just immaculate form with his irons. Now, Phil lost a lot at the Wells Fargo, but before the Wells Fargo, gained 2, gained 1.5, gained 1.5, gained 4.5 at the Players that year. Of course, we don't have the Masters, but finishing in the top 25, I would have to think it would at least be field average. I could be wrong, but I would think it would be at least field average. He had good iron form coming in. Even Colin, I know we don't talk about 2020 since it wasn't played in the fall, but look at his iron form coming in. Brooks gained 5 the tournament before, or 4.5, and much like he did last year, finished runner-up. I would be hard-pressed to believe that this number isn't anything other than at least good when he runner-up the Masters in 2019. So recent iron form is key to a PGA Championship. You've got to be in good form. That was part of the research. Look at the distance. And another reason why I'm harping on the distance, because all of these PGA Championships are played at different style courses. Oak Hill, Kiowa, Southern Hills, just different style of courses. Look at the consistency. Brooks, always positive in distance. JT, always positive in distance. Even Phil, at 50 years old, when he won the PGA, positive in distance for the most part. He had a few tournaments where he wasn't, but mostly positive in terms of distance. Morikawa was positive in distance leading into his 2020 win with the PGA. Brooks, JT, Jimmy Walker was positive in distance in 2016. Jason Day positive in distance. It's just a huge factor of distance at PGA Championships, and these are on all different styles of courses. So that's why I really truly feel distance is going to be a pretty big factor. We'll take a look at the winner matrix. Again, I didn't go back too far because I just wanted to focus on when PGA Championships were moved to May. So Phil Mickelson, he made the cut and then won. Not too much there. Justin Thomas missed the cut and then wins, but he had won, further back a PGA Championship. So I'm not going to factor in. I'm not going to factor in the 2014 Valhalla PGA at all in terms of like a course value. And I'm not going to weight prior PGA Championships all that much in terms of, when I put out my rankings and the course value from prior PGA Championships, it won't factor in a whole lot. Just because the course style of courses change and whatnot, but this is the results in the 2 months leading up to their PGA win, their PGA Championship win. Brooks only played one time. Yeah, it was the Masters, but again, I mentioned several top 10s from JT. I mean, even Phil had 2 top 25s. 2 top 5s from Brooks. So extreme recent form. It's going to be very, very important. So I wanted to expand on the research that I put out there earlier today. On top of, mentioning the top 25 from the Masters. That's also a big thing. We went through, I believe it was the top 20 last night in Fantasy National, who top 20'd the Masters this past year. So that gives you a pretty good idea of some players that you probably want to think about, and the players that fit that criteria. And those names are out on social media over on X. But that's going to do it for the show this evening. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. Like I said, I've been at the computer pretty much all day today. I love digging into the weeds of the data, getting my hands dirty, if you will, trying to find the story that's being told. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at statistics, sports statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. Again, congratulations to C for his outright hit on Rory McIlroy last week at the Wells Fargo, and we're going to try to emulate that success for the second major of the year in my basically hometown of Louisville, Kentucky at Valhalla. Thanks again for all the wagers that you've made so far this week for the PGA Championship, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the PGA Championship. And until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.